link for the meeting. That's why I was late. I was sitting there typing it in, waiting for you to open it up. And so the one that you sent in the email is the correct one.
But the one on the agenda
The
is
one
not.
on the agenda is not correct. So,
Okay.
and Bonnie just texted me and said something roughly to the effect. She said the Zoom doesn't work. Because she's probably trying to get in.
Okay, let me send her a link.
Okay.
That happened to me on another meeting when I tried to come in on the agenda one, the general one. I could get in on the one to the committee members, but not on the general public one. Didn't
Right.
work one time. It was a different meeting.
Trying to figure out which way to send it to her the most expeditiously. Can somebody sing the Jeopardy theme song or something? While I point and click my way through this.
No.
No. I got it.
You
I'm
could
going to wish
send her,
everyone a happy Earth Day this week while we're waiting.
Nice.
you could send her the link that you sent to the committee.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Send her that email.
Okay. So I have sent to Bonnie, so we may proceed. If we can get our housing committee meeting of April 20th underway. For those of you that are already here, you know how to participate via Zoom. We have no attendees waiting in the wing. If they happen to come in while I'm saying this and they're calling in by phone to make a comment, you would raise your hand using the *9 feature on your phone. Otherwise, logged on a desktop type scenario, use the raise your hand feature at the bottom. All of these meetings, we ask you to retain your comments until after the presentation. Unless the presenter wishes to take questions during, then she'll open it up for that. Today, we do not have our chairman or vice chairman attending this meeting. So as a group, the committee members, if you could please, I need a motion and a second to appoint a chairman for this committee meeting, and we can get underway.
I would move David Ring as chair.
A second.
Who did the second?
Matt Fox.
Thank you, Matt. And I would need a roll call vote. Carol is not quite in here yet, so I will announce names. Matt Fox.
Here.
Maureen Valley.
She's on mute.
Oh, okay. See ya. Russ Kelly.
Yes, we are voting in motion, right?
Yes. Thomas Savage. And this is on the motion for David Ring to be chairperson of this meeting.
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you. Gary Liss.
Yes.
David Ring.
Yes.
Jean Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, Ed's just coming in too, so. Okay. With that, David Ring, I leave it in your hands to call the meeting to order, the Pledge of Allegiance, and then you can turn it over to Carol for roll call.
All right, so never done this before, but let's go with it. So I'll call the meeting to order. It's 3:08. And so we start with a Pledge of Allegiance. I'll stand and pledge allegiance to the flag of the
flag
United States of
United States of
America,
America,
and to the republic
To the
for
republic
which it stands,
which it stands,
one nation,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and
with
justice
liberty
for
and
all.
justice for all.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Yeah, I'll be right with you here. Sorry for the delay. The computer would not let me in. Okay, so we are absent from Jeff Duncan. So as chairperson, we have got David Ring,
Correct?
Here.
and let's see, member Matt Fox,
Here.
Maureen Valley,
Here.
Russ Kelly,
here,
Greg Abranovich is out, Gary Liss,
Here,
Kiara Mosier, Thomas Savage,
Here.
Gary Liss,
here again.
again, I see names are all over the place. Auxiliary Gene Wilson
Here,
and auxiliary Ed Horton.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so now is the time for committee members to comment on anything that's not on the agenda. Does anybody have any comments? I don't either, so I don't see any. Does
I
anybody
don't
see
see
any?
any hands.
Okay. Now for public comment, Mary Beth, you went over the procedure for that already. Do you need to go over that again, or
No, I can if you'd like.
I don't
Public
think it's
comment,
necessary? Yeah.
we do have 2 attendees, so we will be paying attention to them. And so at this time, I would say public comment for items not on the agenda. Any participating attendees, if you wish to speak now, please raise your hand. Seeing none,
All right. So we'll close public comment, and we need a motion to adopt the agenda for this afternoon.
I move we adopt the agenda.
Second, Gary Liss.
So we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote on that?
Yes. Matt Fox,
Yes.
Maureen Valley,
Yes.
Russ Kelly,
yes,
Gary Liss,
Yes,
David Ring,
Yes.
Thomas Savage,
Yes.
and that's everyone. Okay.
All right. Thank you. It looks like so we adopted the agenda. Now it's public comment on the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from the previous meeting. So is there any public comment on that?
public attendees, raise your hand if you have any comments. Seeing none, Chairman.
So we'll move on to the committee matters. It looks like from what I'm seeing, that's all going to be done by Placeworks. Somebody, oh, sorry, Carol, go ahead.
You need to take a roll call vote to approve the.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, can we have a roll call vote then to approve the consent agenda?
Certainly. Let me get this back
We
up
need
and running.
a motion in a
Oh,
second, please.
okay. I apologize again. It's not on the, I'm looking at the agenda. If it's not listed, not quite sure I need to be doing it. Okay, so I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
so moved, Gary Liss.
second, Russ Kelly,
And then now we have a roll call vote on the consent agenda.
Correct. Okay,
Okay.
so we have got Matt Fox,
Yes.
Maureen Valley,
Yes.
Russ Kelly,
yes,
Gary Liss,
Yes,
David Ring,
Yes.
Thomas Savage,
Yes.
and that's everyone.
Now we can move on to committee matters?
Yay.
Question mark?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we move on to that. And again, is that Anders or Christy or who's?
Our technical staff on this team is Jennifer Gastelum with
Oh, okay.
Placeworks, Cynthia Walsh, and Lucy Rollins.
Got it.
So I can turn it over to you, Jennifer.
Actually, Mary Beth, did you want to announce a couple of things that went on today?
Oh, well, yes, and committee members who were at your computers an hour or so ago, I was able to forward the vacant sites maps, the 400 plus comments that we've received, some of which have been addressed, some of them have not, but the ones that have not pretty much move over to other elements and are not part of the housing committee. But at least you can see how many comments we've got and how they've been addressed. And as of about a half hour ago, our social pinpoint interactive website has been launched. So you can get their Loomis social pinpoint or from our website, loomis.ca.gov, and under the general plan tab, so planning department, then general plan update, right up at the top, there's a link for social pinpoint. Click on that and follow it through and it'll end up taking you to another link to our social pinpoint platform. Did I miss anything, Andy?
No, I think that's it.
Thank you.
Could someone put that link in the chat? Rather than
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, Jenny, I'm done.
Okay, good afternoon. And I'm going to share my PowerPoint and walk you guys through our presentation and then open it up to questions. So we're going to review the survey results in a little bit more detail. We're going to talk about comments received to date from the previous meetings and the land inventory, and then the schedule moving forward. Again, documents are available, and then as Mary Beth sent out some additional resources to you today, including all the comments received. So as you did see some of this information before, but here are the survey questions, and here are the respondents of this. Now, this was more housing focused, as Mary Beth also just mentioned. There's the new social pinpoint. Anything that you don't feel got addressed through this survey for the housing element can also be incorporated into the social pinpoint survey that is going on. So lots of opportunities to continue to comment. We talked about housing conditions previously. As you see here from the respondents, 57% of respondents did say that they do not need any repairs to their houses. But we will make sure to incorporate that the 8.5% do need major repairs and the 34.5% need deferred maintenance repairs to their home. This information will be included in the housing element. Something that we've already kind of touched on was owner versus renter. 91% of the respondents are homeowners that live in Loomis. And number of years living in Loomis, this is also, not a surprise. 34% have been in Loomis for more than 20 years. 8% have spent all their life in Loomis. So those are a few of the categories and of the things that were included in the survey. This was part of the existing conditions. Commute time to work being 30% of people commute 1 to 15 minutes. This slide was previously talked about, and I think this is also reflective of the 29% in the zero commute. There is a large retirement community, as well as due to the pandemic, a lot of people are now working from home. So age of housing stock is the slide previously presented. 23% of houses were built between 81 and 1990, that being the highest percentage. Again, the housing element does include what Department of Finance reports. So this is just based on responses of people who participated. The people that participated in the survey, 23% of them have lived in, or years have built, was between 1980 and 1990. That was the highest, followed by 1971 to 1980. Preference for future housing. We did touch on this one as well. 40% of the respondents to the survey said that large lot single family is their preference for future housing, followed by 14% wanting small lot single family homes, and then closely coming up 11.3, 10.9, and 8.4. So 11.3 being townhouses or duplex products, 10.9% being senior housing, 8.4 being other. And we did include what the other was, which was a variety of second units and other types of housing available. So all the details of these are included in the housing element. And I'm not on the right screen. Sorry about that. We did ask, again, this was a previous slide, so this one you have seen about housing preference. This is kind of the importance of the survey, is to talk about what the top barriers are to providing housing. This is no surprise. Cost of land, cost of construction materials has significantly gone up. Those are things. Another one that is unique to Loomis is the 42% of people responded that community opposition to new housing is one of the top barriers. The top underserved populations were all relatively close, with 46% being seniors, 42% being lower income families and young families. And that top barriers to obtaining housing is prices and rents, which there is a discussion of that in the housing element. The real estate market, which is kind of on fire right now, so that being 50% of the responses, and lack of adequate infrastructure was identified as a barrier to obtaining housing. And something that's been mentioned heavily in the survey is that small town atmosphere is the best reason to seek housing in Loomis. That's 91%. The rural setting, 86%. We have heard that loud and clear, that keeping our small town rural. And then the great schools at 73%. So these were the categories, again, from the housing element. We do encourage everyone to participate in the social pinpoint and keep your comments coming through that. So we're going to dig right in here on some information. So there was a lot of questions about growth and what growth looks like. And I know this was talked about for some of you on the land use committee, but Mark shared it with me from the land use committee. And I just thought it was a great slide to show and to put into some perspective when we're talking about future growth and what that looks like. There were 14 single family homes that were built in Loomis in 2020. And the annual growth rate since 2010 is 0.69%. So less than 1% is the annual growth rate. And projected population in 2040 is 7,905. And this kind of goes along with what SACOG is also projecting in terms of growth and potential growth. These numbers here show that While single family, there, as we mentioned, 14 units in 2000. There were no multifamily that are being built that have been identified and reported to Department of Finance. Another discussion from the previous meeting was the developer feedback. So we try with all of our housing elements to get in contact with affordable housing developers to find out what they are looking for to help attract them to potential communities and what would make things copacetic for them to actually do development in the community. And based on the responses from St. Anton Community Partners, NC Brown Development, and Brilliant Corners, we did contact Mercy Housing and Mutual Housing, and they don't always like to talk to us. So we did try to reach out to them. They did not respond. What we heard was that the higher the density, the better opportunities for them, to get more tax credit money, for them to actually get projects to pencil out. They need to see densities ideally in the 25 to 35 unit per acre range. So for Loomis, your highest density does allow to 25 units an acre. So that would be for those particular sites. That is, that's ideally what they're looking for to be able to do development to do affordable housing development. So.
And that's before the density bonus, right? So
that is correct.
And is that a 50% density bonus?
That is correct.
So if we were to go up to 30, then they could go up to 45 conceivably.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you know what a 45, just curious what 45 units per acre looks like as far as number of stories? Do you have any?
I would say 3 stories.
At least 3 stories.
Probably, at least 3 stories is my guess. Yes. Depending on how much land. Now, there's not a lot of large vacant sites in other communities. They could spread it out and do something, but it really just depends on the size of the lots that they're looking at and how many acres. Roughly, for housing element purposes, HCD likes to see a couple acres, like 2 to 3 acres at a minimum for sites. But when sites are above 10 acres, then we have to show how it would be subdivided for projects to actually pencil out. So there's varying degrees of opportunity and what that looks like. All right, moving on. Planning for special needs groups was something that was identified through the last housing element or discussions that we had. And so the housing element for purposes of the housing element and purposes of the scope of the housing element, we rely on the state's framework for identifying what the special needs groups are. There are multiple special needs groups. For our parameters for the housing element, we have identified what the state identifies, which is extremely low income households, very low income households, and low income households, seniors, female headed households. We also identify single parent households, but again, the census definitions are for female headed households, large households, that means 5 or more persons with disabilities, and this includes developmental as well as physical disabilities, and service farm workers, and lastly, homeless. So we have called out here the special needs groups that are identified in the housing element, the percentage of households identified based on our census information here of how many of them are represented here in Loomis, and then the programs that are identified in the housing element to help incentivize housing or help these groups to make housing more accessible to these special needs groups.
Jennifer, are the words in parentheses also what the state uses, or was that added
No.
by you?
Those were added by us.
Okay, so when you say you're
Just
using
as a reference, it's not inclusive.
okay, so when you're saying you're using the state guidelines,
Yes.
that's for the bolded type. In the actual draft housing element, it has a different list of examples of special needs groups. So it's getting confusing. What are the special needs groups for Loomis?
Okay, these are the special needs groups for Loomis, and these are the population, or these are the percentage of the population. So disregard then the parentheses, because these are the categories of special needs population. So everything in the housing element falls into one of these categories. We just called these out just so you could see an example of what they look like.
And just to add to that, typically we look at the Economic Development Department data, which will give us the annual income for different occupations. And so that's kind of how we lined these up to determine who falls into an extremely low income category or a very low income or low income.
That is, yes, that is correct. That is EDD information that we try to match to paint a picture of what it looks like, to what job incomes are considered lower income households. And the information on the website or on EDDs is very, like, it's probably 5, 10, 15 pages long. So if you were looking for a specific income category.
Is that by household then, the EDD, or by persons?
It's by job category.
And these are not exclusive. Like you could be a service worker who's in very low income, correct? Or a senior who's
Or
in
a
low.
exactly. They are not, yes, that is correct.
So what about a high school kid that's working at Taylor's? They're going to show up as very low
Sure,
income.
they would be considered food service, right?
But they're actually not needing of housing because they're living at home. I'm trying to figure out how this works together.
I would have to double check the age group that the EDD starts gathering data. I don't know if it's just, all working people are included, individuals. I might have to double check that.
Any more questions on special needs groups?
Is there a way that we can include the types of descriptions you've included here comprehensively, in addition to the bolded categories in the report itself? Right now, the report itself doesn't have these descriptors. I like these descriptors. It helps relate to who are we trying to meet the needs of for Loomis. So I keep trying to say who are our special needs. These descriptors that you say are not the HCD categories are not in the current draft housing element, and it's a concern of mine. How can we get them? Can we put those descriptors in there to give examples in the element itself, not just in this PowerPoint?
Yes, I feel that's we can make that correlation and connection for you, definitely.
Right, fantastic.
Yeah. We'll figure that out. Because we talk about these jobs in one section that it is a very complicated document in itself, because there is a section on jobs where we made the connection with what the special needs groups. There's a section on special needs groups, and then there's a section on income. And so, yes, it is, there are 3 or 4 different places that, yes. So we'll go back and we can,
Yeah, it's in the special needs discussion that is most important. The other ones are helpful, but it's understanding who we're designing for, who are our neighbors that we're designing for, that we're trying to figure out.
Got it. Andy, did you want to say something?
Well, it's a question for you, but this HCD document really is the state's control over the town of Loomis specifically. So if we put things in this document, if you take a look at the annual progress report, they monitor everything. So I just want to be cautious where we put information on how the state of California is going to be tracking the town of Loomis versus what's best for the town of Loomis. And there may be other elements that we can have these discussions in, to the glossary or some other locations. But just years and years and years working with HCD, let me tell you, they become micromanagers when it comes to this document. And
I hear you, Anders. Anywhere in the plan is fine. It's just being clear in the whole plan that this is who we're designing our housing needs.
And Gary has specifically said in the special needs section, or in this special needs group section, this is where he would like that added. So we can definitely, that is a fix that we can take care of.
And maybe we need to put it then in terms of, instead of so specifically that this job is in this category, we could say may include.
Yeah, it's not a hard fast. Exactly. No, we're not exclusive or inclusive, and it's not a hard fast thing because these all could change. So yeah, and this is again an 8-year document. So at the time of doing it, this is what these income jobs fit in these categories. So yes, we can do that.
Great.
Okay. All right. So we're going to move into committee meeting number 1 comments, to make sure that we lead a discussion here of what we have heard and appropriate responses to those. And then these next couple of slides are all about summarizing these comments, and then we can get into a discussion because I know that's what is really important. So bear with me as I get through these. So there is the discussion of the village's site, which is what we're currently meeting the RENA, the high density RENA on is the village's site, the 7 acres there to meet the RENA. Now there is a pre-application on that site. The question is, if a developer does build market rate on a site that is identified for your lower income RENA, the town is not prohibited from approving that project, but the town does have 180 days to rezone another site or sites to meet the RENA so that you're not in a shortfall situation. So that is the law. That is the way it's written. Now we are using the village's site to meet the RENA because of the tight time frame for the housing. However, moving into the land use discussion, you all know what's happening and that there is potentially a pre-application on the village's site that could turn into an application, or another application could come along and it could turn into a project. And if a project is approved, that's why you're forward thinking in terms of identifying potentially more land at a higher density that could accommodate RENA in the future. And that goes into the second question, which is the RH20 overlay. That is the site that we're high density site. We've talked about that. There was discussion about safety concerns. Those things will be addressed through the safety element. And the housing element is unique in the fact that it is just the city limits. We cannot include sites that are not in the city limits. So not in the sphere, just the city limits. Those were, and then there was a discussion about AB 10.
Yeah, Jenny, the town of Loomis does not have a sphere of influence.
Perfect.
So just so everybody knows that there is no sphere of influence for the town of Loomis, it's just the city limits.
You mean no one listens to us?
Don't know about that one, Gary, but to get a sphere of influence, basically you have to go to the local area formation commission and say, we're looking at expanding the town of Loomis at some point in time. This is where we want to expand. And you have to get the LAFCO to agree. You have to get your neighbors to agree. And when the town was incorporated, they chose not to do that. And what I have heard so far in the various committees and other discussions is that's probably not going to happen in the future.
Okay, moving right along. There was a discussion about land inventory, including ADUs. So we don't say where ADUs are in the land inventory, but the town is counting and projecting 24 ADUs, 13 of which are for lower income households towards the RHNA. So we will make sure that we have enough sites to meet the RHNA. In addition, we will include these 24 ADUs, again, accessory dwelling units, second unit, granny flat, all of those terms that the state allows us to project out for this 8-year period and take credit for those potential units. Now, if they don't build, that's okay, because again, we're also identifying sites to accommodate the RHNA as well. So this is just one way to potentially get credit. We're projecting that there is a potential for 24 second units to be built, and that some of them could potentially be rented or, you know, to lower income households. And we're using the number 13. So a little over half of them would be able to be potentially rented or sold to lower income households.
I have a question. Do we get credit for the 9 carriage house ADUs that are being that are to be in the Taylor Road mixed use project? All the ones at the back are to have, they've got separate garages, and those are supposed to have a carriage house over top. Do we get credit for those 9?
I'm not familiar with that project. To get credit, it would have to have its own entrance and its own bathroom and kitchen, or some sort of kitchen.
These were approved as 600 square foot carriage house above the garage, and it looks like from the plan those are separate garages. So obviously they would have to, but I don't know. Maybe you didn't know about that project.
No, but it's okay because we're assuming 24. So 9, the 9 there would be included within the 24 then.
And so, how did they decide how many or what kind of income level when you're kind of splitting it, or you just make an educated guess and send that in?
Sure. So SACOG, the Regional Council of Governments, they prepared a report. So they did a survey of ADUs from all of the jurisdictions in the Sacramento region, Placer County area, El Dorado, and they came up with this analysis. So we relied on that report, which shows you the percentage that you should apply for lower income, moderate income, and above moderate.
Thank you.
And Jean, when they pull those building permits is when we start being able to capture those on an annual basis through our annual progress report with the state. So they just started pulling permits for those. So as those get permitted and finalized, boom, we can capture that ADU.
And to add to that, if the town is interested in trying to set up a way to determine what the rents may be for those units, then you could take credit for them to meet a portion of your lower income RHNA. That's a harder thing to do.
It's more work on Mary Beth, but if,
it is.
You know.
But you would be able to report them in their appropriate income category on your APR.
You're not busy, are you, Mary Beth? You want to add that to your list of things to do, right? There are, as Cynthia mentioned, there are jurisdictions that don't have vacant land that have to rely on this. And so when you go to the building department to apply for one, there is a checkbox or system or a place where you put in if it's going to be a rental and what the income or what the rent range is. And that's how jurisdictions could track what the affordability is of ADUs. But it does require a little bit more work.
Yeah, sometimes it's an optional question on like an application. What do you plan to rent your unit for? And, they don't have to provide that, but if they do, then you have the documentation showing, and then we verify that against the income levels, and then you can include it that way. We are thankful to be able to rely on SACOG's affordability analysis for this information. So they did that surveying, and that was great and very helpful. And to encourage the construction of ADUs, Program 12 in the housing element incentivizes the construction of ADUs. Placer County has some great performas and some a process that they are doing that is very successful that Loomis could look to mimic or tear off of if possible. All the sites included in the land inventory have water and sewer. There was a question about water and sewer. So again, only things that we're dealing with in the housing element, what we consider shovel ready. So the sites have to be available within this 8-year planning period in order to count them towards meeting the RENA. And for that reason, we had to ensure that there was adequate water and sewer for just the sites. So there could be issues beyond that or beyond the 8 years, but that will be done through your other committees of what is actual feasible. And then the median sales price information, all the data collected was solely within the town limits. Again, through your infrastructure plans, there was, again, more questions about water and sewer and what that is. That we're only looking at this 8 years for the housing elements. Future water sewer will be worked out through your infrastructure plans. What types of housing cannot be counted towards the RENA? So nursing, convalescent, or group homes, transitional housing, and tiny homes right now. And as I previously mentioned, to count toward as a housing unit, it has to have its own entrance, a bathroom, and a kitchen on a permanent foundation. And those are state health and safety rules for counting.
Jennifer, on that issue in the programs, what I noticed is some of those types of configurations are to be encouraged to meet our affordable housing needs, even if they don't meet our RENA requirements. Is that correct?
They have to be allowed through your zoning code. They have to be called out, particularly group homes and group homes of 6 or fewer, group homes of 7 or more. So yes, they have to be allowed, but they are, and as well as emergency and transitional housing. They have to be identified, defined and allowed, but yes, you're right. They do not count towards your RENA.
Or could help on meeting our affordable needs for our special needs.
Correct. It could help with providing more housing opportunities for your special needs categories. Yes. RENA just deals with new units built. So yeah. Your general plan takes priority and trumps the zoning. However, the general plan and the zoning have to be in compliance. So we are making programs and revisions in your programs to say that. So typically you do your general plan, you do your housing element, and then you fix your zoning to make sure that everything matches. So in the end, it will all be cleaned up. There are programs to incentivize senior housing and low-income households. Again, programs 5, 6, 7, and 13 in the draft housing element are programs identified to incentivize senior housing. And then there was a question about the rural Main Street technical assistance, and that is currently happening right now. And it will provide insight into your other general plan elements. Great. Comments from meeting number 2 were which programs were specifically included to meet state law. So you can see there's quite a list of them here, and they do reference government code in most cases to say what the state laws are. And because there are a number of them, and that's kind of what drives this process. ADUs do have to comply with setbacks and other zoning standards. Again, that's identified through the zoning code. Banning short-term rentals would be done separate from your housing element if that was an issue. A lot of people are passing ordinances to ban short-term rentals. If that is a concern and issue of yours, that would be done separately. There was a question about the language in the survey. And again, I would encourage you to continue your surveying and providing comments through the new social pinpoint. And then lastly, there was a question here about the need for affordable housing and wishing to do more than the bare minimum. And of course, the town is, if the town can provide more housing, then the bare minimum, I would say, is the RENA allocation. And however, based on your past growth trends that we showed in that previous slide, with the 14 units a year that you did last year, getting to that RENA number would be is somewhat of a challenge in terms of producing more units just in general. But there was the inclusion of the inclusionary housing ordinance, and that would help to incentivize affordable housing to get you more development to occur. And then, so you would have to identify those things when you hire someone to help you with your inclusionary housing ordinance and what that would look like. Committee meeting number 3. We've talked about a lot. We included the slide previously about the special needs groups. We will make the revision to the housing element to identify some of those that match the presentation. There are concerns about density downtown and the commercial, and the town can include a requirement in the land use and zoning to require a mixed use projects so that no site is developed as solely residential. If that could potentially be a program that would then need to be done through your land use and through your zoning code. If there was, right now, a project can be, correct, Cynthia? A project can be 100% residential. Is that the case? And this was referring to that there could be a mixed use requirement.
I would have to double check on that.
Okay. I believe that is the case.
On the language about concerned about density downtown, we actually passed a motion encouraging density downtown for affordable housing. So I'm not sure why that's characterized as concerned about density when
this was an actual comment that people didn't want to intensify density in the downtown, and that it would add traffic congestion, and that they were concerned that buildings would be torn down and that higher dense products would be built, getting rid of your commercial or office space. That was obviously not your comment, Gary, but there was a comment about that.
I believe that was my comment. I was talking about, I didn't want commercial, exactly what you said. I didn't want commercial torn down and just exclusively residential put up in place of that. But Jean said last time that at least in the on the other side of I-80, they were talking about how any mixed use has to be in the same building. And I think that I don't know if we had discussed about that downtown at all, but I think it was just, that was my comment. And
that's not specified other than for across the freeway. That's not specified for downtown.
Correct. But you're saying, Jenny, you're saying that this has to be done through land use and zoning anyway, so it wouldn't even be something we
Correct.
would tackle
Yes, it
here.
would be if you want to make those changes to the land use that say that a project has to be mixed use or there, then that would be different than allowing what is now, which is residential can get built, commercial
I
can
want to
get
say
built.
that it just says,
solely.
a mixed use product. It doesn't specify if there has to be commercial and residential, any percentage tied to that. It's just that mixed use is permitted.
Again, I don't think this comment reflects the compilation of the several comments we just heard today, which is it's not about they're concerned about density downtown, period. It's about making sure that if there's mixed use allowed, it allows for residential if it's combined in the same building with commercial downtown. I think that's what we're trying. The combination of the comments isn't concerned about density downtown. It's concerned about density not being in one, that tearing down buildings to build just residential. So it needs to be required commercial mixed use development if there's going to be higher density. Isn't that what I'm hearing from the combination of Gene, David, and me?
I think there is a general concern on a lot of people's parts that there will be so much density allowed downtown that is going to affect already serious traffic problems, as well as the effect on the commercial if we're not having commercial. I think there is a serious traffic issue that a lot of people are concerned about, whether it's this committee, but in general, I think a lot of people are concerned about traffic and that we're going to put so many people downtown, it's going to make that situation a lot worse. And that's something that this circulation is going to have to work on too.
This would most likely need to be a change that's made in your zoning code that specifies that mixed use is required, that 100% residential and 100% commercial cannot develop, that it must be a percentage of both. But I don't know if that necessarily belongs in a housing element program.
Yeah, if I can step in for a second, I think, we're parsing out a lot of specifics about, density and whether it be residential only or mixed use, commercial, et cetera. And I think the underlying problem here is it's almost like the comment says, well, and I might say, well, I don't care about the density. You can make what it wants. But if the density gets high, you have a traffic problem. And we need to be able to pinpoint how we can mitigate the traffic problem and enforce that in the sense when a project comes in, like you could have whatever density you want, but you got to solve the traffic problem. Where does that fit in? And can you stick that in your zoning somehow to where if you have such a density, you have to have a certain amount of traffic mitigation?
Well, your EIR will identify that. So with the land use change, if you're proposing land use changes to intensify development, again, we're not planning on, that right here. So if you're going to make changes to your land use element for intensifying development in the downtown, that will be then evaluated in your EIR. So projects coming in will have mitigation measures that they'll have to follow to address any sort of traffic issues that are identified in your EIR.
Yeah, and I can see that being a showstopper right there because it's almost, I don't say there's a conflict, it's an oxymoron. Yeah, you could have any density as long as you solve the traffic problem, but you can't solve the traffic problem no matter what you do because there's too much density. So you cut yourself in a loop here and the project will never happen. But, anyway, that's enough said on that.
This is Tom. I mean, I feel like you could get around that. I'm not a developer, but I mean, we got the bus stop. So you could say, we're targeting these income groups. we're only providing, one parking space per every 3 units to essentially force the people who live here to take transit and thus not contributing. So, but I don't know that's something our committee would handle.
Yeah, no,
far as
that's not
restriction.
done at this level. Yeah, we're again at a 30,000 foot level of, that would be like that would be through a development agreement of what you're what's being identified, again based on things identified through the EIR and mitigation measures that the developer would have to adhere to.
And if I understand correctly, the developer wouldn't have to pay for the whole thing. They would just have to pay their fair share. You can't say, oh, if you want to build a house here, you have to replace the overpass and horseshoe bar. You can just say they would have to pay their fair share based on how much traffic they're generating.
Right.
The town would have to figure out how to come up with the rest of it.
Exactly.
Okay, the last one was about environmental justice concerns, and you are doing that through your environmental justice element. And also the fair housing section of the housing element. We're not proposing increase in allowable density. We're not changing land uses or densities around the railroad tracks. This is again, so I have 3 slides here. I have 2 more to get through on the last committee meeting comments. So we just kind of talked about Cynthia, can you speak to the land for the downtown region and what zones we're using and what we are relying on in terms of capacity? Because this is a little bit of a confusing discussion.
We are relying on obviously the villages site, and then we are also looking at the central commercial. There are 2 parcels in there that we're looking at, and we are assuming a mixed use product would occur. So we are only assuming that 50% of the capacity it would be for housing. So if it's a 2 acre site, we're only assuming 1 acre would be residential. Obviously, if it's on top, it's going to look the configuration will be different. But there are 2 sites within the central commercial that we are relying on.
Thank you. So there was questions about solar and electricity, stubs, and that's all through the building code requirements of what is required and allowed for solar and for hookups for electric cars. So that is not a housing element, that's a building code requirement issue. There was questions about the housing element and meeting the arena and the community needs. So again, we set forth the land inventory to demonstrate that there's capacity, and then the programs there are to help incentivize development to occur. And once the housing element's done, then you're working on your land use element, and then the general plan will be done with the EIR. And then when that is complete, then the zoning code gets updated with the things we've identified, that the zoning changes that need to meet state law, as well as any changes in increase in density that are identified through your land use process. It was discussed and there was a motion made at the last meeting to add a program to allow, and Lucy, Cynthia, I'd ask you to tell me what program number we're adding to allow higher density of 20% if affordable is targeted for special needs houses, and then with a density bonus. So again, 20 units an acre is allowed with a density bonus, and we're saying that there would be special incentive to get an increased density up to 30 units. If, again, this would be in addition to the state density bonus law, if you were building houses for special needs populations, which would need to be identified, which are identified in the housing element, and then they're making a case that these units would then be for these special needs populations and therefore get a bonus above a density bonus law. That was motion that was made. There was a question about the fire department and what their requirements would be and the adequacy of police and fire. Again, that will be addressed to the safety element, as well as developers have to pay impact fees to make sure that they're meeting health and safety issues. So the town would not be approving a project that the police and fire couldn't actually accommodate. So developers would have to pay impact fees to make sure that there is opportunities for that meet health and safety issues for development to get built. That is beyond the housing element. So that's actual production of units. Those things would be identified. And then can we count existing affordable housing units towards the RHNA? So the RHNA period begins June, and we don't have a date on here. Is it June 30th? Is that correct? June 30th, 2021, and goes through August 30th, I believe, 2029. So as of June 30th, any project that is approved after June 30th will start counting towards the RHNA. Not until June 30th can anything be counted towards the RHNA. We have a map that we will be going over on the vacant land inventory when we get to that one. This is just a general slide that talks about submitted comments and the number of comments that were submitted towards these common areas. As you can see, new housing and affordable housing, there were 16 comments made. And housing element requirements, in terms of what the requirements were, there were 15 made, and then clarifying questions, there were 35. So I believe that's what Mary Beth sent out. I know we responded to about 107 comments, and we're still, I think the town staff is still, as Mary Beth mentioned, working on comments. There's the master spreadsheet of those comments. Now we have the next couple slides here are on public comments that were received, not committee comments. These were letters and comments that were received. The first one was site suggestion, not the first one. There were a number of comments received on site suggestion. There was a number of sites here as these 4 bullets, redevelopment of UPS parking lot, redevelopment along Ripley Road. So these are opportunities that residents commented on and said should be in upzoned or zoned to allow for affordable housing. This will be part of the land use discussion if these are sites that you truly want to be included or rezoned or redesignated to meet future high density needs. We did receive several comments regarding opposition to new housing and density, that maintaining the small character, and they don't want large houses without character. So there is program 15 to address design guidelines, and the comment was received, and through your general plan, the character and the vision will be worked out to discuss the small town character. There was a lot of questions about meeting the RHNA. There was a rumored proposal on a Turtle Island site and then counting existing. So as previously mentioned, we're not rezoning to meet the RHNA, and we're only relying on existing sites that are available to meet the RHNA at this time. And we didn't include any rumored projects or anything along those lines, because that's not concrete information.
How about Hidden Grove pre-application? Is that what you're referring to as the rumored proposal?
No, I don't know what the Turtle Island site, I don't know if Mary Beth or Christy.
There's another
or
development
Andy.
proposed across the street, across the freeway from Rayleigh's.
Turtle Island is
At this
across.
time, we do not have any kind of application, pre-application or anything. Pre anything meetings, perhaps just to review zoning general plan and what's required on that site. But other than that, nothing.
Right, that was Scott Paris's brother or relative that is referring to. It's not the Hidden Grove project, which we do have a pre-application for.
Right,
There was
and
a
so
developer that came to several residents 9 months ago with a plan for redevelopment of the Turtle Island property.
Ah,
So that's where that rumor came from, I think.
okay.
So it includes houses and commercial, and it was the whole 70 acres, basically.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, new affordable housing. I think I have one or two more of these slides just on summarize the comments for you guys so you can see what everyone's asking about. Their incentives for ADUs. There was a question about if we're going to tear down an existing project, where do the residents go? That's a state fair housing displacement. That is not a plan in the housing element. We did include the inclusionary ordinance and a number of programs here that will help to encourage and promote the development of affordable housing. Energy efficiency, there was a number of questions about electrical hookups, solar, all those things are done through your zoning and your building department, and they all are building code related. That will be identified through there. There was some comments received on, allowing for duplexes, alley access, safety concerns, and another listing of more sites to rezone on Sierra College Boulevard. So there are, again, housing programs 5, 6, 7, 10, and 12 encourage a variety of housing types. And then in terms of safety concerns, that will be addressed through the safety element.
Was the Sierra College Boulevard north of the railroad tracks or west of the railroad tracks? Is that what that's referring to? Does anyone know?
Maybe.
Yes, I believe that's accurate.
Right.
Okay, last slide on comments here, and then we'll get into the land inventory. So there was a couple comments regarding phasing of development and updating fee ordinances. I do believe one of the economic development element will be proposing a plan to make sure that fees in the town are reviewed on a annual or biannual basis, and that fees will be updated, and that is a plan for that. And then in terms of phasing, I know this has come up quite a bit of through a development agreement. If a project comes in, the developer would work out a phasing plan to talk about how development would occur. Beyond that, putting a cap or a moratorium or a requirement, a limit would be potentially in conflict with SB 330, which says that you can't limit development from occurring. So that would be a bit red flag for the housing element, as well as potential lawsuits if you looked at doing some sort of cap on development. Housing element requests, expanding the list of special needs, we will take care of that. There will be a glossary as part of the general plan that have a lot of the acronyms. The formatting and font and all that will be cleaned up with the whole general plan. We talked about the census designations of female versus single parent households. Clarifying questions were, program modifications, reliance on PG&E programs. So we identify what is available, whether people are taking advantage of that. And then, as previously talked about, the data sources in the housing element. So SACOG put together a data packet that included the information that was done probably about a year and a half back. That is information that is in here. That information has already been blessed by the state. We have added to that information where we can, but we do stick to that because that is what has been approved by the state. So that is why their 2020 census isn't quite available yet. So there were questions about why we weren't using that. But we're using, again, what is approved by the state in terms of information. Okay, the land inventory. So this is a breakdown of site capacity. Cynthia, do you want to walk us through this table here?
Sure. So the first table shows you our vacant site capacity. This is based off of, like Mary Beth mentioned earlier, there's a large spreadsheet with an accompanying map that shows you the parcels that we are using to meet our lower income RHNA, which includes your low and your very low, your moderate income RHNA, and your above moderate income RHNA. So it also shows you that we are projecting out, as Jenny mentioned earlier, projecting out 24 ADUs, and it shows you how those are broken out. And then it shows that we have a surplus of 61 units. Now that in the housing element does have an asterisk on it, and that surplus is based on using the central commercial capacity as well. So if we do not rely on those two sites in the central commercial district, we are at a surplus of 0. We completely break even there. And that is using out our projected ADUs as a part of that capacity. So HCD sees your RHNA as a number you need to meet, but that it should not be your cap. You need to have a little bit of wiggle room to provide additional sites. So we definitely want to make sure that we are able to increase that density in the central commercial so that we can get to that 61 unit surplus. The next table, you can see the number of sites that are included in the inventory and the capacity that we are using to for each of those, for the total of those parcels.
The high density overlay being the village's site, that is just your solely high density.
Exactly.
The medium density residential, what is the designations for those sites? There's just a medium, and what's the range of density on
So
that?
for our moderate, we are looking at the tourist destination commercial to rely on that. The density allowed there is up to 10 units to the acre. And then our above moderate, we are looking at a medium density residential, the RM5, to accommodate that. And that also has an allowable density of 10 units to the acre.
So for the very low and low category, we're relying on the villages. The others, we're relying on a density of 10 units. And then your above moderate is all of just your single family zones.
Correct.
Are there any questions on this? The next slide is a map here.
You know how many of those come from the Heritage Park?
Heritage Park has, let's see, we have 40 of those parcels included in the inventory, and those are all to meet above moderate.
Because those are small parcels, so
they are.
Odds of those getting developed with anything other than a house
Right.
at this point, a single family traditional house, are pretty. Is there anything we can do to encourage the town to maybe consolidate those parcels into a single parcel to make it more attractive to a multifamily developer that might want to come in and put in some affordable housing?
Yeah, we can definitely include a lot consolidation program. We are relying on them to meet your market rate. So if it just comes in with a single family home, that's definitely what we're planning for those sites. But we can also include a lot consolidation program to help facilitate that if an affordable housing developer was interested in those sites.
One thing about that site is if you look at putting a lot of density in there, the capacity of the streets to get back out of there, they're not really designed for that, for a huge amount of traffic going onto it. And the place that they would have to come out onto Horseshoe Bar is right at that traffic signal at Rayleigh's, which already is not a very good safe situation. And the town doesn't have much to say about it because that is controlled by Caltrans. And so That would be one of my concerns, is putting a lot of traffic coming out of there from a high density. It's, if you just look at a land map, it looks fine, but when you look at the actual on the ground situation, there's some problems probably.
And we have a total of 51 units that we're assuming there. But as you can see at this top table, you have a 101 unit surplus. So even if we only assumed 25 units for that area, you're still okay. You still have a surplus there.
Is there, and we keep talking about high density for these low income, I mean, that's required by RENA, but are there things the town can do to encourage low density, low income multifamily, single story? I mean, those were common back in the 70s and 80s. I don't know if I don't see them around as much these days, but
I think it's harder to get funding for projects like that. That's why the affordable housing developers we spoke to, they need to be able to have their projects pencil. They all need 25 plus units in acre density. So, yeah. They put the ADA accessible units on the ground floor and all those things for persons who can't, go upstairs and stuff. So, but yes, density equates to affordability for multifamily affordable housing developers.
okay.
And
My fear is we're kind of
go
in
ahead.
a spiral where we zone for these 20 to 25, because it meets RENA, but that's not really good enough for a developer to come in and actually build low income. So they're going to come in and build market rate, and then we've got to, then we got to find more land to zone for high density. So it's just going to keep compounding itself over time if we don't really take drastic steps here to get some low income housing actually built. It's just going to, the problem's just going to get worse and worse and worse over time. Because the town's had low income policies in place for years. It's just nobody's ever come to us to build them. So we're obviously not going far enough to get those developers in here.
We had Mercy come in. It wasn't well received, but they did come here. Where the mixed use project is now going in on Taylor. It was not well received by the community there, but they have been. There was a project officially pursued there. On the Heritage Park, you went over that pretty quickly. The original map for that was 40 units. So to be thinking about 51 units, I don't understand where you get that. Secondly, the neighbors there were promised that the design of the units there would be no smaller than or different than the units surrounding them. So there's real serious concerns about that neighborhood reaction to that type of higher density. There's also the access problems Jean talked about, and the fact that that provides a significant open space for the community that, aside from housing, there's actually an open space need. And we have a master plan for parks, recreation, and open space that was supposed to be integrated into the new general plan when the new general plan was developed. That master plan highlighted the deficit of open space in the community, the need for more park space, and the town considered that when it was acquiring the Heritage Park property when I was mayor. So I'm not wild about including those units there. And it also backs up against the freeway, which is the EJ issue. So it needs to be addressed in the open space element, needs to be addressed in the EJ element, and in the traffic, the circulation element for the traffic issues that Jean is highlighting.
Sure. And as I'm sure we've talked about before, this is really just a land analysis. This is looking at all the vacant properties that are
Right.
in the town. And when a project actually comes in, that would be something that would work out the percentage of open space that's required, the lot size, all of that. So this is really just right now looking at density and the acreage of the site and coming up with a realistic capacity. It's not looking at future projects and how they may pan out or how residents may want it to pan out.
You're missing the point on open space. It's not about the percentage of that property
Sure.
that would need to be required as open space. It's the fact that the town is deficient in open space and parklands. The town acquired that property, which is acting as open space and parkland currently. So it's not about how much open space of this
Sure.
This area could be used or required for a particular project. It's that for the entire town, that entire area as open space and parkland meets our deficiency overall for the town.
Yeah, and the tricky part is that it is zoned medium density residential.
Right.
So,
So it
the
is
zoning
zoned
may need to
appropriately,
change.
and that's
Yeah.
why, we're using it because it is zoned appropriately for residential to accommodate residential. So we had plans to break out these into 4 maps to show you, and there will be additional maps that go into the housing element, but a team member was down for the day after a COVID shot. So this is the map that we have right now to identify what land is zoned and general plan designated appropriately. And the Excel spreadsheet that Mary Beth sent out matches with the sites that are identified here on this map. And again, it will be broken out into the A, B, C, and D quadrants, but the spreadsheet has the sites listed that correspond with the sites on this map, and this is what the land inventory looks like. And I apologize, I know this is hard to read on a computer and if your screen isn't that big, so
But
apologies.
it's what Mary Beth just emailed us, so we can blow them up on our
Yes,
own.
you can blow it up on your own. Yes. So again, the Excel spreadsheet is the land inventory. There are numbers associated with the numbers that you see on this map. So you can reference the site with the actual number on the spreadsheet. And that is the land inventory in whole.
And Jenny, can you clarify, or will the parcel below number 57 be included? Or is it included but not shown?
That's a Lucy Cynthia question.
Yeah, we currently do not have it included, but we definitely can add it. It was just a discussion as of this morning, so we have not added that to the.
Yeah,
it is a rather large parcel. I believe it's around 30 acres. So.
And for the group, what is the site and what is the zoning on it and general plan designation?
It's a Turtle Island.
CT. TD.
Yeah, it's the tourist commercial.
Tourist destination.
Yeah.
And that allows residential right now.
Correct.
Yeah.
Only in a mixed use structure.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
And a brief clarification, you'll see a couple of numbers on quadrant B that are a white circle with a number in. Those refer to zoning overlays that apply on those parcels. The real numbers are the black numbers on each parcel. Correct, Cynthia?
Correct, yes. And we are thinking that when we finalize these maps that we will mute the land use designations a little bit more that are not the vacant parcels, just so the vacant parcels do stand out a little bit easier for the reader.
What about the parcels along Sierra College there? Because Sierra College at some point in the not too distant future is going to be, a 4-lane major road, connecting basically 50 to, Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got it currently zoned like residential estate or something like that. wouldn't those parcels kind of make sense to put, because they'll have access to the transportation network once Sierra College is widened, easy access to the freeway and everything. Wouldn't those parcels make sense to put in some higher density housing?
Sure. So either the easiest route here was to look at where mixed use is permitted. And so that's why we did that. In order to count your general commercial, most likely at a higher density, you'd need to apply your overlay to those parcels, or you'd need to rezone the property completely.
Are you talking in quadrant D, the red areas? Is
Yes.
that what
That.
we're speaking of? Okay.
Actually,
So
above that,
everyone
the yellow areas.
got it. The yellow
Those are not-
area in quadrant D. Everyone, just so
There
you're following.
is a subcommittee called the Sierra College Boulevard north of Taylor Road that is looking at that. And there is a potential applicant looking at proposal in that area also, but nothing has been submitted to date.
And those aren't vacant properties, right? So they, like right now, it
Some
looks
of
like
them
this is
are,
all just.
or they might have one house on 10 acres.
No, I get that, but I think these are like properties that nothing is even on them. Is that correct? Because these are actually vacant properties right now.
Correct. But as far as the land analysis is concerned, we can look at underutilized parcels. It's just a different analysis that we do.
Right.
And that would be something that we should do in the land use, not in the housing element, correct?
Yeah, it gets a little, I mean, again, we have plenty of clients where they don't have like vacant land. So we have to do a very detailed analysis on underutilized sites. You are fortunate in the fact that we do not have to build a case to meet your land inventory at this point. So, but it is, as you are fortunate that you're doing your land use element update. So you could make those potential changes to those sites if that is, the wishes, how that works out.
And do we have to change the housing element then if we do that?
Nope.
Okay. So and one last question about these are all is this map and all this is going in the housing element? This is something that we submit to the state?
Correct.
Does this mean that and all of the housing inventory that you're using is based on our current zoning, correct?
Correct.
So even though some of us or all of us would not approve certain development in a very specific location, project specific, this is already approved. You're not changing anything else other than what's already available currently.
The only change we're proposing is to the two sites, the site 49 and 50 in the tourist commercial, and we're only proposing to increase the density on those.
Quadrant B,
Yeah.
49 and 50
But we're
is
not
TC,
changing
and it's
land use,
the
no.
pink sites, and that would be again an increase, as she said, as Cynthia mentioned.
Yeah.
So that's the only change that we would be doing to get this through review,
Increase from what to what?
from 15 units to 20 units.
In a mixed use structure.
Let me double
Right.
check. We may have moved, we may have gone to 25 to be consistent with the overlay because let me double check.
Gene, she's not talking about the Turtle Island parcel. She's talking about the parcel
40.
directly adjacent to
It's in
Rayleigh's.
B, yeah, it's in quadrant B. It's the pink sites, 49 and 50. They're the light pink on this map.
The light pink. Those
Directly behind,
Those-
well, not directly behind Rayleigh's, but close.
Those are the
They are,
parcels
yeah.
owned by what's that guy's name at El Dorado Hills?
That's the old village.
Vinyl
That's the village
Perkins and Paul
project.
Johnson.
Yeah, Vinyl Perkins Properties.
No, Jenny, you were correct. It is proposing from going 15 to 20.
Vinyl owns
Right,
one
yeah,
of the
take-
parcels.
Okay, yeah,
Paul
right here,
Johnson
right
owns the
here.
other.
I'm getting fancy in Zoom. I'm circling it in purple.
I was gonna say, you're
49
circling
and
it in the
50.
same color that all the background.
I know.
is.
Sorry, I'm not that sophisticated. Oh, let me change the color here. Okay.
I'm pretty impressed that you knew how to do that.
You know what? I'm getting fancy. Okay, there we go. Sorry, it does not look pretty. That's the two sites where we have to include a program to increase from 15 to 20. Again, your default being 20, and but no other changes are being proposed as part of the land use, as
So
part of the
this is-
housing element.
So these would be basically changing it from a commercial building to 15 to in a mixed use, or we're going to wipe out what little commercial is left on Horseshoe Bar.
Well,
No, we're
not building
leaving it as
anything.
mixed use.
Yeah,
We're leaving it as
it's
mixed use.
Correct. And Cynthia had mentioned previously, we're only saying that half of these sites would develop as residential. So it's a larger, 49 and 50 is larger site. We're only relying on half, correct?
Yeah, we're only assuming
Half
a
of-
50% capacity.
We're only
there.
pursuing 50% capacity on these sites. So which would be great in a mixed use project. There is nothing proposed right now. This would just, again, right now, it is their residential is allowed on these sites. And what we're saying at 15 units an acre. And what we're saying is that we would allow it at 20 units an acre. Residential at 15 is already allowed. We're increasing it to 20. There is no proposal for projects on this site, and we're only saying 50% of it would develop or could potentially develop. It's a very conservative number to get us to show that there is enough land to meet the RENA.
Can we include something about the idea of the mixed use being required as a request of the zoning, the land use committee? What I keep hearing Gene talking about and asking about is they're not allowed to just do residential in one building and commercial in another. It's the mixed use is in one building, having commercial on the bottom, residential on the top is the general idea that we've been talking about and having projects proposed about. But it sounds like the zoning is not clear about that. So the land use element committee, in the motion we adopted the last time, what you captured didn't include the reference to the land use element committee to consider the need for higher density to meet our housing needs. And today, the clarity coming out that it's the mixed use in one building that we'd like to see required is in order to deal with the variety of issues associated with higher density. Is that, am I getting that right from the committee perspective, and from the staff perspective? Can you do that?
I think, Gary, we wanted that specifically on Turtle Island because we were trying to avoid residential over there. We did not want leapfrog development of residential across the freeway, basically.
Right.
But we got two different things. We're talking about mixed use in a structure, as well as mixed use projects where it may be appropriate that part of the project is all residential and part of the project is office, commercial, other kinds of things.
What, for clarification, Cynthia, what does TC say right now? Are you?
I'm looking at it up right now.
Okay.
Give me just a second.
I don't know that you want to make that recommendation that is limiting, because you want as much flexibility as possible while saying that you want it to be, while we're saying 50%, and that could be something that you can say that you want at least half of it to be residential, half of it to be commercial. Saying that it has to be in the same building and saying all those things is more of a constraint. You need to allow for some flexibility for this to actually occur.
Which is actually what your code currently says. It says that you encourage the project to provide either commercial structures on the front portion with residential in the back, or commercial and office space on the ground floor with residential units above.
Perfect.
So it provides for flexibility across the board.
Yes.
Great.
Perfect.
There was some great work done.
Zoning allows for.
We can check something off the list. Great work, everybody.
Zoning does allow for multifamily housing as under a use permit process in that CC zone.
Isn't it TC?
CC.
Oh.
Commercial
Central commercial.
Central commercial.
The Vinyl Perkins and Johnson property.
Yes,
Yeah, but the
yes.
49 and 50 on this map looks like it says TC to me.
It
It
does
says
require
TC.
a. Mary
That's a
Beth,
land
yes.
use.
Yeah, the land use. Does the land use require a conditional use permit?
The zoning
No, it would be the
does.
zoning. So where
Yeah.
does it say that?
In zoning code chapter 1326, under commercial zoning districts. Table 2-6. So multifamily housing is allowed with a use permit and design review for all new construction, where multifamily housing in a mixed use structure just is a permitted use by right. No use permit.
So if it wants to develop separate, there is a CUP, but if it develops as a mixed use project, it is permitted?
Correct.
Got
And you
it.
said mixed use structure, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's still.
It still limits
think I'm
you
okay
there.
with what it currently states. Like I think I'm okay with that.
Well, would SB 330 application negate the need for the use permit?
Andreas.
Where the housing mix meets the requirement, yes, where it's proposing a 2/3 housing, 1/3 commercial mix. I suppose it could.
Okay.
Even if it says in the same structure in our general plan.
So it would have to meet the general plan requirements.
Okay.
So again, it would have to be a 330 project that comes in compliant with all of the then applicable general plan requirements.
Okay.
Thank you, Andreas.
I have a question
I'd
about.
like to
Go ahead,
go
Gary.
ahead, Jean.
The up at the top, the one that's the office professional, that I'm thinking about the area in general and how that came to be. That tan triangle below that's now, when the village came in, got changed to residential, was office professional, and the lady that owned the land before Todd got it for the village worked really hard to get office professional, and she wanted kind of a medical complex or something up there. And so hers was office professional, and that's how the one across the street, the little light blue one looks like on mine, or on the other side of King, that's how that got zoned office professional too, with the idea that those would be compatible uses, and people would go home at night and not interfere with the neighborhood, which if you look at the zoning around it is RE. I think it's RE, which is residential estates. They're all larger, very rural properties. So I think we would need to consider that if we're trying to keep our core. You look at this and you say, well, it's practically downtown anyway, except when you look at what's really there, it sort of isn't really downtown at that section of King. It suddenly changes to the more rural area. So could you talk a little bit about that, picking that one, and what kind of density were you looking at for
Sure.
that?
So Site 7 currently allows for 10 units to the acre. So we are assuming that will be market rate housing. We are not assuming that will meet your lower income need. The only parcels that will meet them are the two that Jenny circled previously, the pink ones, and the village's property. Other than that, we are not looking at any other properties to meet a high density product.
I feel like we're in a little bit of a race here. Just curious what the timing is on the general plan getting finalized, and if this developer for the Old Villages property comes in and submits an application, what's their deadline here? It's
already started.
I mean, if they submit an actual application, then we can no longer use that property for the arena.
It's a pre-application.
No, if a project is approved, on it, then you have to find another site. So I believe, what is it? They have how many days to actually
180 days. I
180
believe, after
days.
that.
So we have to submit to HCD for 60-day review and get this adopted by September.
Housing element. No, I
The
think we need
housing
to finish.
element has to be adopted by September.
My
But-
plan was to have the housing. This is like our last. This needs to be the end for the housing committee. I mean, we need to get this done tonight. Get it approved and sent off to the planning commission tonight. I mean, that's what has to be done, in my opinion.
Correct.
And so, I don't know what I see that there's still stuff that I would like to talk about, but I don't
Sure.
think we have time to do it. Is the problem?
And David, I wanted to be clear, the housing committee is not going to go away. The housing committee has a role in making recommendations to the various other committees. So
Right.
circulation, the various land use committees. So especially as they start coming in with recommendations, we want the housing committee to review those. And you pointed out in a number of your comments, things that really belong in the land use element rather than the housing element. So there is time to proceed with that. Real briefly on the Hidden Grove, the town rejected their pre-application because it was incomplete. They are in the process of updating that pre-application. I expect to see that back within the next couple of weeks. And then they have their 180 days to get their full application in. But with the pre-application, that ties down the general plan designations in existence today, or when that application is made.
Can you clarify that again? So you're saying that if they apply again, their previous application ties down the general plan?
So their pre-application was incomplete when they submitted it, and we have communicated the deficiencies to them. They're in the process of updating their pre-application to be a complete SB 330 compliant pre-application. And so that 180-day clock for them to submit a final application for their project starts running from the date they submit their fully complete SB 330 compliant application. So right now, there's not a clock running yet. But once they submit the pre-application, the date of the pre-application submittal locks in all of the land use documents, like the general plan.
So then, once they, so I heard two different things there. So they submitted the pre-application, it was rejected, but they get to amend it, correct? So it's still on the books essentially?
No.
Right now,
So
they
it's
have
essentially
no vested
disappeared.
right to use the current general plan.
Say that again?
Once
I'm sorry.
right now, they are not enjoying the benefit of SB 330 yet. Once they
Okay.
submit a complete application, they will be. So the date that they submit the revised pre-application is the one that matters for purposes of what land use documents we look at in analyzing
Okay.
their project.
Right.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
So that their application will be tied to the current general plan, not the future one that we are discussing now, if they get it in on time.
As long as they
In
get
all
it in
likelihood, yes.
before, yeah, August.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a race.
Okay. I feel like, how much more of the presentation do we have? Because we need to get
None.
to
Well, we just have
and
a
then we need to-
schedule. That's
okay.
it. So we're done. This is where we're at. This is where we can open up the discussion. Again, we are here. We are taking it to, we're planning on taking the housing element to the town council and planning commission. This next month, we have to submit, we will not be submitting to HCD in April, so we're off schedule here, that I know that I see this. Bottom line is by September, I believe September 10th, is it? September 10th is when we have to have the housing element adopted, because, or to stay on an 8-year cycle. As of May 15th, the town is out of compliance because that is when housing elements were due. And so we have to submit for a 60-day review prior to adoption. And our plan is to take it to town planning commission next week.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
and then follow with town council after that on
May 13th
May 13th, and then
or May 11th, I'm sorry.
Thank you, May 11th. And then submit to HCD for to kick off the 60-day review period.
And then just to clarify, I mean,
Go ahead.
we're in a race here, but we're going to lose one way or another. We're going to lose because as soon as they submit an application, we've got 180 days then to find
No.
7 more acres.
No,
right?
no, not
as soon
until
as-
a project is
Or
approved.
when it's approved. So let's assume it's approved, in 6 months or whatever.
In 6
Sure.
months, then yes.
Then we're gonna have to
But
turn
you're
around.
doing the land use element now, so you're already know that that's a possibility.
So
And
it
so
would,
the-
yeah.
So
our
the
land
housing
use
committee
element-
needs to make sure the land use element is identifying additional land at 20 units an acre.
So we need to plan for that now. We need to
Yes.
assume it's going to happen,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah, so if you have those parcels along Sierra College that you think are a good idea, that would be a recommendation so that you have a larger surplus. So when the village's property, if it does disappear, it becomes an approved project that we know will not be affordable, then you have a backup plan to fall on since you are going through this general plan update effort rather than having to go out separately and identify additional sites. So planning ahead definitely would make sense.
It's not just planning ahead, it's dealing with the circulation element too, though. Matt made this blithe statement that it's going to be a 4-lane road from 50 to Lincoln. That's not what the current general plan says. That's not what the community wanted. And the community is not in favor of a 4-lane road from Taylor Road north to Lincoln. So to then complicate it by assuming that there's going to be high density housing along that 4-lane road that the community doesn't want doesn't make senk to me. So
But we got to put it somewhere. Where else? I mean,
well, we've got it identified. They've already identified what is needed.
But I believe that the bigger picture is that if this project is approved and it's not affordable.
He's planning for the future of what if this project
I'm
is
assuming Hidden Grove is going to be approved, not affordable, and then we've got 180 days to find 7 more acres of.
Is there
high-density
any
property.
opportunity that Hidden Grove, Mary Beth or Andy or Christy, has anyone had conversations with Hidden Grove? Is there any opportunity to do affordable units there or high density units, or are they planning for high density, just not affordable?
In the conversations we've had, we really have not discussed affordable versus non-affordable, but their plan is for high density on that one site there adjacent to Rayleigh's.
What is there opportunity to discuss it, like Jennifer just said? Why haven't there been discussions with them about affordability when we're spending all this time on trying to figure out affordability? And the prior plan included a supposedly affordable housing until they said no. Can we ask the developer to come in with an affordable component to their project?
It's what does the town want to give them, right? It's either you can allow them to go 45 units or defer some of their fees.
There's a fair amount of discussion there because as an SB 330 application, they have to do exactly what's in the general plan. So it doesn't allow for some of those ups that you're talking about. But, once we have a pre-application and it's in, then the staff begins doing their review and we will have discussions. So far, discussions have been limited to the requirements, purely the requirements for compliance with the application.
Great. So is that I want to keep this moving as much as possible.
Yeah,
because-
so yes, agreed. We have about 10 minutes left on the clock, so.
Do we have to stop at 5? Is that like a requirement?
No.
If they strong.
I have to step away at some point, but
Okay, yeah.
but no, go ahead. I'm
Do we
sorry,
have
I have
public-
kid
do we-
commitments, but yes.
Yeah.
Do we have public comment, David?
I was just about to ask if there was any last committee comments on this before we open it up for public comment. No. All right, then we can open it up for a public comment. Mary Beth, can you see if anybody?
Thank you. So any members of the public attending, if you'd like to make a comment, please raise your hand and you will be unmuted to speak. Seeing none.
All right, and so back to, we closed public comment and back to the committee deliberations for anything. I did want to make, I meant to put this in the committee comments, but there was one thing that I wanted to say about the surveys that were made. It seemed like the town, there were very, very many comments saying, no housing, we don't want any housing at all, stop building, just keep it as it is. And I think that with the number of people that are saying that, I don't think that there are a lot of people out there who understand that we have to do, this is something that has to be done. And so I don't know what the town can do for that. Is there something that the town can put out in the newsletter or something where this is something that is required by the state for us to do? And this isn't something that we're like, hey, we love housing and we want more and more of it. It's not that we're trying to fill a need for our town and we're also doing something what the state is requiring, and it's not.
Wasn't there a presentation to the council on compliance, Andy?
There has been presentations to the council and the planning commission on the requirement, a number of presentations. So I'm not sure, David, if you have some suggestions for further.
I actually don't. And I know I've been for all of those, and it's my opinion just is that I guess my question is there something else the town can do, because apparently having presentations at a town council meeting doesn't seem to be enough. And I have no ideas right now as to what it is. I'm just stating an opinion that the town is going to be angry with us, with the council, regardless of essentially what happens.
Yeah, not us, the town council.
Yeah.
What's that?
Not us, it'll be the town council.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
One of the tell residents to band together, buy the property and not build it, just because it says it's zoned, whatever, doesn't mean it has to be built, could encourage them to do that.
We've been explaining, and Gina, I know, on the planning commission, we've been explaining our requirements and what we can and can't do, et cetera, I think for years, via newspaper articles, people attending meetings. The village was a good example. I think we tried to illustrate our constraints and what flexibility we had and didn't have. And so people are going to continue to comment forever about what they want, irregardless of what the law is. And I'm not saying ignore those people by any means, but there is a point where the information's available, they've had opportunity, and we need to move on. I don't think we can really address, it's like CEQA. You answer all the comments, but it doesn't mean you have to satisfy every comment or every person to make them happy. You move along. And I think we're at that point here.
All right.
I think the residents are looking at like 5 to 10 years out, right? Where the town council needs to look at 20 to 40 years out and do what's best. Where the residents, most residents figure they're going to be long gone 30 years from now, but the town council really needs to look that far out to see what's going to be best for the town long term.
Go ahead, Jean. I'm sorry.
I think whoever said we need to move along, that's correct, because this needs to get to the planning commission. Correct. We need to wrap this part up. But I do think that partly because of the pandemic, the public is far less, knows a lot less than they would ordinarily in Loomis. If you look at the number of people that came out for the village, we had hundreds of people that came to those hearings, 3 or more in the Blue Goose, the one that was the first one in the school. And I realize Greg is absolutely right. In spite of everything we tried to say at the time that we rezoned for the overlay and explained why we had to do it, we still had people mad because we were going to let that developer build apartments there. But yeah. I think in this case with the pandemic, we have not had the kind of public meetings to let people know. And a lot of people don't take the Loomis news. They get their news maybe from a Facebook group, which is full of, who knows what kind of misinformation. And a lot of people don't go to the town council meetings. Even the ones that would have gone in person are not necessarily watching the Zoom meetings, especially if they don't know what's going to be discussed. So I think as things open up, we're going to probably as a town need to get people's input, or at least educate them a little bit more on what's going on, so that the whole general plan movement doesn't keep rolling along and people all of a sudden, whether it's their own fault or not, feel left out, like, how did this happen when I wasn't looking?
Right.
So I think the town is going to have to do some more education somehow along the way. And the housing is going to be one of the ones that is the most sticky for the public.
From the public outreach standpoint, a reminder that, there was a snail mail mailing to every property in the town. All the notices that went out on the MailChimp to persons who are subscribed, all of the committee meetings. So a lot of information is out there. And I think now that we have the social pinpoint up where people can make comments, it's going to provide another opportunity for input and understanding of what's occurring. And I think we look forward to the point when we can have the public meetings and discuss the general plan in those public meetings. But a tremendous amount of output or outreach has occurred for this general plan. And it could be also, some people are interested and other people are like, we'll wait and see what happens.
I was gonna say, if you really want to get them interested, just have another village project. Then people will start paying attention.
If I can also add, our public outreach will now include, currently at the printer are 3 banners for the 3 main entry points into town. So they're pretty big, and the descriptor is short, but it's Envision Loomis 2040. Get involved, and our website address. So, we're trying to do everything we can to touch everybody's little hearts and get them involved.
Yeah.
Cool,
I think going forward too, I think we need to take advantage of these recorded Zoom meetings, and maybe somehow we can identify which meetings address which issues. And as people come forth with certain concerns, or I didn't know, we can refer them to those specific Zoom meetings. I mean, that's kind of a project, but I think it's an opportunity.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea, but the number of man hours or human hours,
I know.
or AI, if you get AI to do it, then it would be, it's actually a great idea, but it's just something that we don't have the AI to do that just yet. All right, I'm sorry, Carol.
I just want to let you know that what I've started doing on our meeting agendas, and I'm going to move it forward on all of the meeting minutes for all minutes, is I'm going to include the link to the Zoom meeting for that specific meeting, so that if something happened at a meeting, all they have to do is go to, it's right on the minutes page. You'll start seeing it on the next couple of agendas you see for all the meetings, is that the Zoom link will be on every single set of minutes that, so if they don't understand the minutes, they can go straight to the meeting and see what was said.
All right, and just real quick along those lines, because you showed up a little late, the Zoom link for this meeting was incorrect on the agenda that was released for the public.
That was something that was actually nothing to do with that. It was something. Okay. It was a Zoom expiration of a link.
All right, got it.
That's why it took me so long to get in.
Got it. Did you want to say something, Russ? It sounded like you were about to.
Actually, yes. We in the town of Loomis have been ignoring the housing element for many, many years. Contrary to what some people believe, the 40-some unit subdivision called Heritage Park was purchased not for strictly open space. It happens to be a development that could put housing in Loomis. And because we owned the property, we could have done some arrangements to help make that happen. So there's a varied opinion on that. But with this AB 330, this kind of puts things in our court when we've been ignoring it for so long. So the day of reckoning is here for us to get our housing plan in order. And it's been coming all along. And we need to finish it up and move on. I agree with you 100%.
David, Ed Horton.
Yep, go ahead, Ed.
Listen, I've appreciated being included in all of this. I think one reason we are not getting a lot of public comment is the community is growing more and more comfortable with local government, with the town government. The staff has been very open about the housing issue. People feel comfortable that they're doing the best job they can. We all understand that a majority of people in Loomis, as the survey pointed out, aren't particularly in agreement with what we are required by law to set up. And I think we've done the best we can. And I'm very complimentary of all of you that have been involved in this. These have been good discussions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Ed.
All right, so from here, I think, is there anything else anybody wants to deliberate before we?
This is Gary. I just want
Yep.
to make sure that the minutes capture what we had said in our motion the last time, to be referred to the Land Use Element Committee, the higher density issue, and to the Circulation Committee to look at the upper limit that would be okay for still having adequate parking and acceptable levels of congestion. That's what the minutes we adopted today said. It was not reflected in the PowerPoint description of the motion that was adopted. I just want to make sure that our referrals to other committees are being referred in the to make sure that the issues that we've raised here are being considered by those other committees.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I think that's and I think you, Carol, you feel like you probably feel like you're doing a good enough job. But do you think you addressed what Gary was talking about?
Well, I took it straight from the straight from the chat, the words that were produced for it. So the minutes reflect exactly what was stated in the chat. It was word for word what was stated in the chat.
Right. And to Gary's point, I think that at least the way that I understood the way that the PowerPoint presentation was going is they were just saying generally here were the concerns, and then we're going to address them. And it wasn't specifically, we were concerned about this. The point you were making, I don't think they meant it the way that you read it. But again, I'm seeing nods, and so I'm going to go with yes.
Correct.
All right, so do we need a motion to approve? I mean, what is the next step here? We need to approve the housing element to send it off to the planning commission. Is that our next step?
Correct.
It would be to recommend that the planning commission review and recommend to the town council approve the submittal of the housing element to HCD for the 60-day review.
All right. So do I have a motion?
Yeah, thank you.
I'll make a motion to submit the draft of the housing element to the planning commission to recommend submitting to the town council.
I second that motion.
Okay.
Who was it that?
That was Matt and
Matt Fox.
Thomas. Yeah.
So Thomas did the second?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Can we have a roll call vote then, please?
Yep, I'm coming. Okay, so let's go with Greg Obranovich,
Yes.
Matt
And
Fox.
my battery is like at 2%, so I'm going to be out of here in a minute probably.
Okay, Matt
Yes,
Fox,
yes, for Matt Fox.
Maureen Valley,
Muted.
Yes, sorry.
that's okay. Russ Kelly,
Yes.
Thomas Savage,
Yes.
David Ring,
Yes.
Gary Liss.
Yes.
Okay, that's all of us.
All right. So do we have any assignments, or we don't have a next meeting yet until but I understand land use starts to put stuff out, right?
That is correct.
There's no scheduled next meeting for us.
There is no scheduled next meeting. However, if any of the committee members feel there's a need for a meeting, let your chairman know and we can discuss and set one up. But right now, we're in the process of putting the volume 1 policy documents together. And I think definitely we want you to review that, the land use goals and policies. And today the contract went out to start doing the circulation element. So we're a little behind on the circulation element, but it will be coming soon.
And the chairman
like to-
is Jeff Duncan and the vice chair is Greg Obranovich.
Correct.
So you're
And-
saying something, Mary Beth?
Yeah, I'd just like to remind and invite you on Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock under the downtown, the Taylor Road Downtown Business Corridor meeting, in cooperation with LGC, Local Government Commission, and SACOG, Sacramento Area Council of Governments. We're doing a Loomis Streetscape Design Workshop. It's an interactive Zoom meeting. So whoever participates can participate in the interactive mappings. And we're going to be doing a virtual downtown walking tour where, you can say what you like, what you don't like. There'll be some polling questions along the way to keep you engaged. And I think it should be fun. There was one that these two LGC and SACOG did for the city of Colfax. And I wasn't able to view it, but I listened, just phone in. And it was really interesting discussion with the community members on things that they wanted in their downtown. So, there's, it's, either on the website. If you need a link for it, just shoot me an email. We'll get you in there however you need to be. So if you're having a problem finding it on the website, under those committee meeting links, it would be under that downtown Taylor business corridor meeting for the link, the agenda. There's no PowerPoint or anything. It'll be a totally live run event. So
Okay. Thanks, Mary Beth. Thank you to everybody at PlaceWorks for sitting through this long meeting, and thank you for everybody on the committee again for electing me as chairperson for a day. That was fun.
Good job. Thank you. Sorry I was late.
That's okay. And with that, if there's nothing else, then I will adjourn this meeting at 5:10. Thank you, everybody.
thank you
Bye-bye,
all.
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, David.
Thank you all.
There's Seattle is in the background if you want to see.
Nice.
All right,
Nice.
I'm having fun. Back to vacation.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Plug in your phone.
Yeah.